represent the towns of Guilford and Vernon in the Vermont House, and I'm really thrilled to welcome Kitty Toll to our neck of the woods here. And I wanted to first start out by saying thank you to Tom Bodette for opening up this amazing space in town, the Hatch space, which was a long time in your imagination, and now for it to fully come into being. So thank you so much for hosting us.
You're very welcome.
And so I just wanted to say a couple things about why I'm part of the Kitty Toll fan club. I served with Kitty my first biennium in the Vermont House, and what I always appreciated about Kitty was the chair of the Appropriations Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees, as you know, in the House and in the legislature. And I was a brand new freshman, they called us, and when I would, you're a little nervous as a freshman around some of the veteran legislators, but Kitty was always so warm and welcoming and inviting to all of us. And when we'd have questions about the budget, she would get back to me right away. But more important, I was really sad when Kitty decided not to run for the House, because I really wanted to continue working with her. But I'm really super excited that she's running for lieutenant governor. And this is why. Kitty, when she would present the budget on the House floor, she would talk about our budget as a moral document. And it's a document that expresses our values. And Kitty knit the people together to create that budget every year. And it's a document and funding that helps our most vulnerable Vermonters, helps our small businesses, and so much more. And so I'm really excited because I think Vermont needs a leader just like Kitty, who has experience, strong leadership, and really works from her values. So I'm so excited that she wanted to come here. And I consider, I live in Guilford, I consider Brattleboro my town too. And I wanted to welcome you, Kitty. And thanks everybody for coming. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Kitty. I think this is a really nice informal setting where we can hear what you want to share with us about your vision and the lieutenant governorship. And I hope there'll be a time for folks to ask questions and have a conversation. So thank you, everyone. Help me welcome Kitty.
Does anyone want to sit before we start? I just don't want people to be uncomfortable. So if you want to sit, go ahead. I want to thank Sarah for organizing this and for having me down to the southern part of Vermont. Vermont's such a small state, but when you're campaigning, it seems so large. I do have to say, Tom, that I was so excited about looking at all of your whole woodworking projects and hearing about the classes that I wasn't listening to your voice, which I should have recognized. And then when you just said one little thing there, I'm like, oh yes, I know who that is. But I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just so absorbed with what you've done here and the space you've created.
Well, I better dial back the shop a little bit.
Now I'm going to my ear's going to be to the voice and I'm going to miss the words. But thank you for having me and thank you for the quick tour. And to Catherine for the tour of your photography space. It's just amazing. What I'm finding in Vermont towns, and I'm just really starting my tours around, is each town has their own unique character, but there's a real common thread about Vermont towns and the Vermonters that live there. I mean, they're real communities that care for one another, and we want to see our small communities thrive. And I know every part of Vermont is so important, whether you're in Chittenden County and Franklin County is now seeing that growth. And I grew up and still live in the Northeast Kingdom in Danville. And, we love our ruralness, but we also know that we have to build our economy and welcome new people in and keep people there, but also welcome new Vermonters into our communities. And I think there's a silver lining with COVID that people are catching on more to Vermont, and it's a place you want to live. It's a safe place. They like our community, people like our communities, and they're liking the small schools. We think some of our schools are really big, but our biggest schools are small compared to most other areas in the country. So quickly, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Danville. I'm the youngest of 14 kids, which, I know my mother did only have 10, but she raised all 14, and I was the youngest. And so I think I had to be the peacemaker often to survive 13 older siblings. And those skills really helped me in Montpelier. I really found those skills helped me in Montpelier. I was a middle school teacher as well for 14 years. And I think that also helped me deal with middle schoolers. I love that age group, and that seems to be 13 and 14-year-olds. Either you really like them or it's not the area for you. And they taught me a lot. Teaching school was probably some of my best life lessons. I got a little bug for politics when I was younger. My mother, I grew up in this odd family dynamic where my parents, before there was even a term for role reversal, my father was the one who did all the fun stuff with us. We wouldn't have had Christmas without my dad. He took us to church. He took us on picnics and tractor rides. My mother milked the cows, ran the farm, did taxes, and was a very no-nonsense person. And so my father brought all the fun into our lives. She brought all sorts of other richnesses into our lives. She ran for the legislature when I was just 5. So are you 5 or 4, 5?
How old are you? You want to tell her? Do you want me to tell her?
4. So I was just a little bit older than you when my mom ran for the legislature, and it was what's happening now, and so many of you are impacted by redistricting. And she redistricted herself right out. It's when every town had one town, one person to represent, and then we moved toward population, and that's where the Northeast Kingdom really got its name. The governor was so frustrated because there were so many towns in the kingdom, they could swing votes if they all got together. And my understanding was George Aiken cursed once and said, those guys from the Northeast Kingdom, and then they redistricted us, and now we have to be like everybody else. But when I was just a little older than you, we didn't have kindergarten, and I went to Montpelier with my mom, and I could stay on the farm with my father, which I'm sure I did plenty as well. But I remember being just little, and I'm looking at how young he is, and to think I just used to wander around the building by myself. And there's a great dog downstairs that I used to go and visit, and it planted a seed early on for me. And it was a building that felt warm and welcoming to a kid, and a building of that size typically wouldn't feel like that. And it did. I felt safe there, and it felt purposeful. I returned as a legislative page when I was in 8th grade, and I knew I would come back someday. And I started teaching school after I graduated from Danville, went to our state school system, and then got a master's degree at the university. So I utilized Vermont schools. And after teaching, I had 2 opportunities to run, because I'm a female from the Northeast Kingdom that was more conservative, and so to win a race, because a woman hadn't been in our legislative seat since my mother in '65. And so that's quite a time period. And the first time I considered was when Bill Clinton was running, because I needed a presidential race to have those coattails bring me in. And I was in the middle of my teaching career, and it didn't feel like the right time. I had to wait until Obama ran, because it would have been very challenging to win a race of that kind without a strong presidential candidate. And so I ran that year, and I was successful, and that's when I started my career. I was first on the Ag Committee, and I requested that committee, and I think it's one of the most important committees in Montpelier, because I always say, what would Vermont be without its agricultural heritage? And I really treasure and respect our deep agricultural roots, but I know agriculture has to expand, and it's going to be very different going forward, and we've seen it change and move, and we have to continue to embrace it as it evolves. Dairy's very close to my heart. We still have our dairy farm in its 7th generation, but Vermont is way beyond just dairy, and it has to be the whole agricultural community. And it's something I've worked to support. The Working Lands initiatives moved through when I was in the legislature, and I was on appropriations and was able to help secure that funding, which was critical for many of the agricultural new initiatives to move forward in Vermont. Then I went on to appropriations, and that committee used to scare me. I used to see that chair, and I'm like, when I was a freshman, you didn't talk to her. But she was open and friendly too. It just seemed like a committee you didn't want to go near. And my last 4 years, I ended up chairing the committee. And it was really important to me at that time, and being a chair, whether it had been appropriations or wherever I was, I wanted the committee to all be at the table together, no matter what the party was. And that was really important to me. There had been a history, and it was slowly changing, but a history, if you were the minority party, you voted no just because you could vote no. And that didn't seem like a good enough reason to vote no on something as important as the state budget. And if you're bringing monies back to your community to support, the economy and housing and building and the roads and bridges and everything that we do touches the state budget, I thought there should be more support for it. And so I really worked with the whole committee as a group. And my time as chair, all of our budgets that we passed out, and the governor vetoed a couple of them, but even with those, everyone voted out on unanimous votes. I never had a no vote on a budget vote out of committee. And they were near unanimous on the floor. And it took work, and it wasn't work. I just thought it was important that people saw this as their budget that they could bring home to their communities. And it wasn't something you voted no on just because you could. That just didn't seem like a good enough reason. And then I left the legislature to start, maybe, find some new challenges and opportunities. My sister once told me to leave before your sell-by date. I don't think I was at my sell-by date, but Tony Klein, who was a representative, said, you just know when it's the right time, and I really struggled right up until the day before I gave my press to the newspaper, and I said, do not print it, because I haven't decided, but I'll let you know tomorrow, whatever. And I really, really struggled, and I chose to do some different things, and I didn't know what they were, and I didn't know they'd be so cramped down because it was COVID, and so there was less opportunity to just go find opportunities. But when January 6th hit, and I was with the former speaker, she was not back in the House, and we decided to watch all of you get sworn in and hear the speeches. We were just in shock that afternoon watching the news on television, and we just couldn't believe. We were there to celebrate, and we were texting everybody and doing selfies, and then everything was unfolding in Washington, and it didn't hit me then, but a few months later, what am I going to do? I can't leave a country like this for you guys. It's pretty much a mess right now. And I have children, and they're in their 20s, and they have no problem saying, thanks a lot, Mom, for what you guys have left us. And I think everybody has to do their part, and everybody's part is very different. And I really like politics. I like policy. I like moving good policy to help people. I think Vermont's a tremendous state that's a leader in so many ways, with marriage equality and death with dignity and GMOs. I was so excited, when we were the first state, and we wagged the dog's tail. We made Congress act on GMOs immediately, and no other state had done that. And we do some really incredible things, and we can be a little edgy, but we're usually on the right side of edgy. And so I just knew that I had to do my part, and I really like policy, and I like politics, and
What was your part with the GMOs?
Oh, I supported the labeling of GMOs.
Okay, thank you.
I did support the labeling of GMOs. I was even more happy, though, that we could get Congress to act on something.
Yeah.
That was, I think the one of the hugest results. But I just felt that I'm a real consensus builder, and the divide is creeping into Vermont. I don't think it's as bad as in other states, perhaps, but we can't let it come any further, and where we can work together, we need to work together. And there's some issues that you have to just stand your ground and move those policy forward, such as with marriage equality. In my mind, there was one path forward for marriage equality, but on many issues when it comes to policy, I think it's much better to move forward than to stand back and not move at all. And we may not get as far as we want in some policy, but as long as we're moving in a positive direction and bringing people along, I think compromise is not always a negative word. It's very positive if you can bring voices and people together. And I think I can do that in the Lieutenant Governor's office. It has a very, very limited role, as we know. You preside over the Senate, and if the governor's out of state, you step in for the governor, which is an archaic rule, which you guys need to address and change with cell phones and airplanes, and you don't, if you go to DC, you can still act as governor, but we need to change that rule. And then there's always, you know, if you had to step into the role of governor. And so I think what I could, I know I could bring from my time in the legislature is opening up the office to help the pro tem and the Senate pro tem and the speaker work with policy. If they're working on pensions and they're working on housing projects, and the plate of the pro tem and the speaker is huge. And if I could offer to take some of those off and convene meetings, bring senators and representatives in, use it as an information gathering area, and help to move other policies forward, I would love to open up the office and bring some real purpose to it. And I left with I left with a lot of trust, and I had great relationships, and I built up these relationships over the years. And so I don't think the door would be closed in my face, and if it was when I put my nose under the tent, so if it was stomped on, I would look for new purpose. But I know that in areas of Vermont, like in the Kingdom or other rural areas or cities like Brattleboro, if there's challenges, to identify those challenges and bring voice to them in Montpelier so that the legislature, both the House and the Senate and the governor, hears what those issues are. And where I live in the Kingdom, broadband, cellular, and housing are so important because we can't attract new families, and it's difficult to keep people there without full coverage of broadband, cellular, and you can have those, but if you don't have housing, you can't do one without the other. And then childcare, for working families, they're all a big mix. And we have all those federal dollars. I've been watching them carefully, and I understand the budget. And as the dollars, they won't all be spent, even though they're all appropriated. As they come back for reconsideration to go out, I would love to have a voice for Vermonters where there's pockets of areas that have not been covered, and don't let them be left behind. Because this is our opportunity. We're never going to see dollars like this again. And even if we don't agree on the dollars being here and how they're ever going to be paid back, we have them, and so let's use them responsibly and plan for the future so that there's not big cliffs. If a program is going to run out because of these dollars, we need to plan now, not in 5 years when the dollars are gone, so that the program continues or there's a proper exit for that program. And so that's what I would like to bring to the office, and I know I would do a good job, and I miss working with Sarah and Emily, so I'd love to be back there. And if you have questions for me or anything else you'd like to know?
If you want to get involved with the campaign or donate, what should we do?
Oh, I have David. David is right here, and he has some great flyers, and there's even what kind of code is a QR code?
So we have a QR code that connects to our Act Blue. Also, if anybody is interested in getting involved in this race, we really need you at the forefront and to spread Kitty's message far and wide to every corner of the state, because this is going to be a tight race, and we need you involved and need your support.
On my website, which is kitty4vt.com, there's a place where you can go in to volunteer to help. You can learn more about me, donating to the campaign. That's such a difficult thing to ask for, but getting a name out statewide is really important, and that's why I'm coming to every town. It's name recognition, and I was known in Montpelier, but I'm not known, from East Haven all the way down to Bennington and all parts in between. And so that is what I'm working on. And I do want to say the role of lieutenant governor is a job that I'm looking at. That is the job and the work that I want to do. You know, where I go in the future, 2 years ago when I left the legislature, I never had planned I would run for this office, never had planned. And when I was in the legislature, if anyone had ever told me I was going to be chair of the appropriations committee that scared the death out of me, I would have said, I'm quitting now, I'm going home. But I just don't know what the future will hold, but this is a job I want. I think I can bring purpose, and I think I can help move good policy forward. Yes.
So do you have any intentions on intervening with before Vermont state recognized corporations closing as indigenous nations? And particularly there is the 556 that is going to be having its third reading on Tuesday about getting a $9,000 land tax exemption.
I'm going to have to defer. I have to tell you, I am not completely up to speed. I know the topic that you're talking about, and I haven't followed the bill as closely as I've been following a lot of the money, and I apologize for that. You know, the bills are endless, but it's as important as any piece of the money. And so, Sarah, if you can give me, you know,
Sure.
some talking points where you guys are in the House.
Are you talking
on
about
that bill.
H556?
Yeah, and so do you also have like no previous involvement with the recognition of the four Vermont corporations closing as indigenous nation?
We did have, when I was in, I'm trying to think what year, and I can't come up with the year, recognizing the Abenaki, are you?
Well, they're not actually, like their genealogy was fabricated, and so they're not
Right.
actually of First Nations descent. They're
Right.
Europeans.
So that was what we did many years ago. One of the congressional candidates, Keisha Ram, was carrying the torch for that, and it was passed. And
And you looked at their genealogy before voting to approve them to be recognized?
no, I have to tell you, I am not up to speed, and I really, it's an issue that I'm going to be completely honest. I cannot have the conversation I need to have with you, and I will learn about it, and I don't know where the bill is going, and I haven't listened to the testimony in committee. I'm not in Montpelier, so I have not heard the testimony.
Part of the testimony is missing because Senator Vincent Aluzzi said that he was not going to, he invited in the rescinded invitation to the Odanak tribe, who are their own sovereign nation that were reserved within Canada. He was saying that people outside of Vermont aren't allowed to testify, but he did accept testimony from people in New Hampshire for the CPA recognition.
Senator Aluzzi?
yeah.
So you mean years ago?
Yeah.
You mean years ago, because he's not a senator now? Okay.
Hi, so I worked on the bill that's moving right now in my committee, and so I can talk to you about it after the event if you want to talk
Well,
about
I
it.
want there to be more publicity about it so that people are aware, because the schools really aren't teaching people accurately who the real indigenous people are. And so like it's, even though it's a $9,000 bill exemption now, all of the money that they're going to be getting in grants and scholarships is really part of genocide against actual indigenous people.
So Emily, I'm going to need you to help me with that information. But thank you for the question.
I don't think Emily
appreciate
can help you because she has been supporting passing the bill.
Oh, here's some other questions.
Okay, thank you. I need to ask a question. So I loved your presentation, and to the point that I'm like, why isn't she running for governor? So you addressed that. I'm like, I'm going to ask that question if she doesn't address it, but you did. And so how would you really, is there some way of changing that lieutenant governor's office so it has more of an effect for all of us Vermonters? I mean, it does, everybody keeps running for it and saying the same thing. It's lame, kind of, the Senate. So you got some ideas around how it could be more?
I would have to look and see if that would be, where the duties lie, if the duties lie within the Constitution, or I need to find out exactly where the duties lie and to see what else could be brought to it. What makes it a little different in Vermont, and not every state does it the same way, is that the lieutenant governor can be a different party than the governor, and they're both the executive branch, and we don't run as a team, and so it's really two separate offices. If you have a lieutenant governor and a governor in the same party, I think there would be far more collaboration. And I'm not recommending that Vermont changes and moves as, that you move as a tandem together, in tandem together. I think it's really trusting and listening to the people that are running, what they have to say, and believing that they will bring this work. I really like the work of the legislature. I like the work that I did there, and I know how valuable it is. And that's why I think that I could bring more purpose for me into that office. Depending on who the lieutenant governor is, if the governor lets you in for a meeting, and I would request a meeting every 2 weeks with the governor, because I think it's important that, that there's a good relationship there, and maybe even messages that can come back to the legislature. I think that that's key. But also, depending on who the lieutenant governor is, depends on whether the pro tem and the speaker can comfortably work. Because a lot of information, you have to have a lot of trust, and you have to have a working relationship with people before you just start planning the direction that you're going to go. And so depending on who walks into the seat, if you think philosophically the same, and if your agendas are at least on the same wavelength, depends if the work that you can do. And that I am being sincere when I say this is the work that I want to do. I'm not using it as a stepping stone for higher office.
Well, I don't know if I was implying that.
No, I know you were. No, I know you.
I'll tell you what I do appreciate. I do actually appreciate that you are from the Northeast Kingdom. I mean, I just think that you have a lot in common with like Route 4 South and Chittenden County focus, because we feel like how people feel in the Northeast Kingdom, sometimes marginalized a little bit down here with how City Hall works up there. And so I think it'd be good that you bring that sensibility.
And the needs of rural Vermont. I mean, the true needs of rural Vermont. Life is very different in Canaan, Vermont than it is in, Williston. It's very different needs. Small state, but very different needs.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question about housing. What do you see doing about the housing crisis that exists, especially in Winton County? I don't know about the rest of Vermont, but the affordable housing, transportation, all of the things that keep people tied down.
Fortunately, and Emily and Sarah can both talk to this, and when I was there when the first batch of federal money went through, we put more money into initiatives than we have ever been able to put out. We could never have dreamed about the investments. If somebody said that we could put $300 million into housing, I would have said, you're crazy. I never had an extra $1 million in the budget. What we're finding a big holdup in Vermont is the lack of supplies and the lack of contractors. And so there's a significant amount of money out there, but getting it into projects, there is a holdup. I was just in I'm in Brattleboro. I was just in Bellows Falls, and I mentioned affordable housing to a gentleman who does a lot of housing projects, and I said I met with somebody yesterday in St. Johnsbury, Northern Forest, that are also working on housing projects. And in St. Johnsbury, there's this old hotel, not the new avenue, they just redid that, which is great for affordable and senior housing. But another hotel, and it's for more working, middle-income families. And in a few hours ago, the gentleman said it's all affordable, because if it's not affordable to families or lower income or whatever housing, elderly, whatever housing you're looking at, it all has to be considered affordable housing. And I appreciated that definition, that it has to be affordable for everybody. Our opportunity is now with housing. We have more money than we've ever had to put toward these initiatives. And we also, because of Senator Leahy, have had even more money come in. And I hope that continues, but I'm a little nervous without him being on appropriations in DC. I think Vermont is going to see a dryness of federal funds that we haven't seen in quite some time. until we build up seniority, and it shouldn't be that way. It should not be that way, but in reality, it often works that way. So we're not getting it out there fast enough. We've brought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units on, online across the state, but materials and contractors, and preparing more high school kids to go into those fields, plumbing, electricians, contractors, surveyors, architects, doing more of the, I call them professional trades in the high school, to get kids to have good quality jobs, to give them that opportunity.
Thank you. Just an add-on to that question is, I work with a lot of families who are, who have housing insecurity issues, and a lot of times they can find housing, but they don't have a reliable car. They can't get to work. They can't, their lives don't function, start to fall apart. So is there any movement around increasing transportation? Unfortunately, the electric vehicles that we give so many incentives to, those are still probably very out of reach for many of the Vermonters that you're talking with. Our downtown centers, I think it's really important that our housing, that we have lots of opportunities in downtown centers where, you can walk to grocery stores, or you can access rural public transportation that even brings you into Montpelier for a job or into Burlington for a job. So when we think of housing, we can't think just, setting out into developments, far from town. We have to think of doing more within the walkable communities. So just as an aside, I took a test one time to see how long it would take me to take the bus from Brattleboro to Bowles Falls.
How long was it?
Oh, God, it was like 2.5 hours.
So it's undoable.
It's undoable. It's
Yeah.
undoable. Yeah, it can't be done on a daily basis.
We do, I have to say, in the Kingdom, we're really lucky. There is a bus route, Burlington to Montpelier and St. Johnsbury to Montpelier, and those commuters are actually made for people that have to be there, by 8 or 8:30. And so doing more of that model where they can get people there in time for jobs.
Thank you.
Lars Torres, I work here in Hatch. I'm curious, so Sarah.
Did you live in Cabot?
I did. Good
That's
memory.
okay. That's right. Now I know. I was just.
I didn't want to lay cards on the
that
table,
name,
but yeah, okay. So Sarah had, said, hey, creatives, come meet Kitty, right? So creatives caught my ear. What are some of the ways that you think the Lieutenant Governor's office could advance the visibility of Vermont's creatives, our industries, and what are some pieces of maybe missed opportunity in the past, legislative-wise, or ones that you think could be advanced, during your tenure?
If we're going to really attract new Vermonters here, the creative economy is, it's essential. I was in Burlington. I have to be in Burlington too. I don't know, have you been to Hula? Have you seen the Hula?
No, I left just as they were renovating the Blodgett factory, right?
Yeah, the old Blodgett factory, and Blodgett moved out to Winooski or Essex, so we didn't lose Blodgett, which was really important. They needed a larger facility to do they do pizza ovens and major ovens. And there's this facility on the waterfront in Burlington called Hula, and I visited it. It's a co-working space, and it just blew me away for young entrepreneurs to go in and have all of these bright minds mix with one another and bounce ideas off from one another, not to have their own huge office spaces, and they're bright, enjoyable. It's just a place that you would want to work, and it would just spark your interest. And what I also really liked about the building, it's all energy efficient. The amount of solar on the roof is able to do all of their electric and all of their heating, and they can even charge enough cars that are coming in. That may change as more cars come online. And they were sending some energy out that was giving them credits for other buildings that they own. And so when they thought of this space, the co-working space it's a really healthy space, not just allowing you to mix with other people, but it also allows investors to come in, and you can present your ideas and find investors that want to get behind you and push really incredible things through, like the new electric plane that is, the company that wants to open up in South Burlington. They're local people that have come up with this concept, and they want to start building these electric planes. And it just gives an atmosphere and the opportunity for people to move forward. But it's also a healthy experience. They have a bar, and not that a bar is that important, but it's a place to socialize at the end of the day. They have a gym. They have healthy food, so if people are working and they don't have to leave, and it's just kind of this community of just growth and healthiness and energy efficient, and it's a model. It's large, but this model could be replicated across the state in all sorts of sizes. And I'm seeing it here. I mean, this is what this space is as well. The building, obviously, you're working with a whole different type of building, and so for this to become totally energy efficient, are you working on it?
We're putting 55 kilowatts on the roof this spring.
Excellent.
Which will take care of the building's common areas, not the tenants. And we're also creating co-working spaces upstairs.
Excellent.
So we're very tuned to, Lars comes from that world very much, and it's a very big part of our mission is to the creative economy, and also what you spoke to earlier of the professional trades. And so many of those programs have been stripped out of the schools. It'll probably be a generation before they'll return politically, even though everyone sees the need for it, because who can find a plumber. It takes time, but it doesn't take much time to throw something like this together, if you will, by comparison. And so we can bring the school to the schools rather than ask them to do everything is sort of the goal of our work here.
And with so many more people working either in a hybrid fashion or remotely, you can only stay in your home so long, especially if you have a large family and lots of distractions. And to be able to have those co-working spaces where you don't have to make a huge investment and you can go and be with other people, share ideas, and be outside your house if you're a remote worker. And I think it's going to attract people to come to Vermont. We have a great brand. They love our openness. We think we're crowded around here. This is not crowded compared to New York City or Boston. And so to allow that privateness, but also to have the co-working spaces, I think will really be an attractive piece to people wanting to move to Vermont.
And Kitty, I just want to build up. This is, you can see I'm like, this is so exciting for this community, what you've created here, and the need for it. And my whole point about Burlington was that I just get kind of jealous, is that everything that they do up there is all these cool things, like that we might be smaller in population, but all these communities could use this.
Yeah,
we're cool too. Don't worry about it. We're authentically cool, and we were around longer than the Burlington area. But they seem to get a lot of things done up there for the people on a lot of different things, and I just get jealous and want it for. I don't want to move up there. I want it here.
We all have our own identities. Like, I don't want to change the kingdom's identity, but we need broadband. If we don't have good broadband.
That's right.
I can't get people. My kids aren't coming back until we have broadband. They're just they go crazy if they're disconnected.
Katie, I want to make sure, because we have Stephanie Bone in here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but who runs our downtown program in Brattleboro? And I want to make sure and I have to say, the conversation about our downtown and vibrancy Stephanie's been doing some great work, and I just wonder if you had questions too about whether it's the creative economy or what some of the challenges people are facing here. Stephanie, not to put you on the spot, but Stephanie's an amazing resource, has started to really pilot the Everyone Eats program, and really brought that in.
Put that in the budget.
Yeah, it was.
Everyone
when
eats.
you were in the legislature.
Yeah.
It happened? Oh, how exciting!
So we did in 2020. We put money into the Everyone with the SEDCA.
Yes. Thanks to
Yeah.
FEMA, and thanks to FEMA, we haven't touched that money. So $30 million from federal dollars has come into the state through that program, but we are going to the state now. I've actually been really sitting here fascinated thinking, What is the lieutenant governor position? So that was an interesting discussion. Thank you. I am the head of the downtown organization, one of 23 organizations around the state. And one of the things that we're working on right now is that the state, by statute, created the downtown improvement districts. And then along with the downtown improvement districts goes an organization to run it. But it is not state funded and never has been. No dollars from the state have gone to make those organizations happen. So we're going to the legislature this year asking for money. But my question is that with all of this money coming in, and you talked about it, like, let's make sure that there's a runway so that we're not just funding a once and done thing. And currently we're going to the legislature with a once and done thing, which also doesn't sit well with me. Hopefully there's precedent, but I think everybody's thinking that. I'm going here, I'm going to get money, and I'm going to lay the precedent. How could we set it up where we're thinking about this for all these incredible programs and not lose all the magic of them?
That's one thing I'd like to open the office for Lieutenant Governor is to bring the information, the thinkers in around the table, and how are we going to plan for the future? Because a lot of the dollars that have gone out for one-time infrastructure improvements and broadband. There will be maintenance, but starting whole new programs without a way to continue them is something that we try to stay away from. But we know, I know some of these monies are going to lead to things that down the road we need to continue them, and so they're no longer a pilot. They're reality. We need them. It's going to be a challenge. When over $3.5 billion have come into the state, plus all the other monies to the community, it's going to be a real challenge when all the dollars are gone. The entire time I was on appropriations, except for when the COVID hit and the dollars came in, we were always filling a gap. We always had more expenses than we had revenues. And it's very difficult to address money to the downtowns which is greatly needed in order to make them vibrant and, build the economy. But when you're working with gaps for so many years, we didn't move forward in a lot of areas. We always balanced the budget, we made it happen, but it didn't allow for a lot of growth. And taxes are a real mixed bag, and I'm not advocating just to raise taxes, and Emily will, that's her committee, Ways and Means. I was given X amount of dollars to put into the budget, but we have lived for many years now with a governor where we haven't even raised fees, which are supposed to cover the cost of a service. And when we have to raise those fees in the coming years, they're going to have to take a large jump because we haven't kept pace, with even our fee structure. And Emily, would you agree with me on the fee?
Yeah,
that's going to be a crisis.
It is going to be a crisis. And actually, I had a long-standing white Republican on Friday say to me, I think we're actually building a Republican coalition to have a comprehensive fee bill, because we all know that the next side of this is just us all sort of tipping over. So yeah. I like to think that I don't raise taxes, I make money. That's,
right.
Yeah.
It's for
out of magic somehow.
Yeah. We have about 5 minutes left, because I know Kitty has another event to go to, but so I want to just let Kitty know that, but I'm keeping time.
I'm Liz, I'm on the
Hi, Liz.
Brattleboro Select Board, and I just, some of the initiatives that you talked about are right on target with what the town is doing. For example, we expanded our agriculture committee to talk about, food and loans and so forth, that a broader perspective that people would actually use. And we're trying to expand the bus system to be service more the workforce, and then of course housing. So I see your goals and our town's goals coming together nicely, and I would appreciate having an ally in the state.
Thank you. And you did mention something that sparked something that I really worry about, and we're seeing it across the country. And I think Vermont really is going to be a refuge in the future for water supply. The water supply across the country is scary. The amount of water and how clean the water is. And I think Vermont's going to be a very attractive place in the future. I think COVID made it a very attractive place, but I think water is going to be a real issue.
And I read an article, it's been a while, 6 or 8 months ago, that I think it was the Wall Street Journal, the 11 counties in the United States most likely to, where you could endure the coming climate change. Comfortably, 7 of them were in Vermont.
Yeah.
Nationwide,
Yeah.
11 nationwide.
11 counties that they, I don't know what the metrics all were.
Not states, counties.
Counties.
Yeah. So,
Well, we don't have the
Right.
fires, we don't have the droughts, we don't have we had Irene, but we don't have the huge storms, you know, we don't have the hurricanes and the tornadoes, and I wish we had more snow. But, you know, but that's, you know, that's an effect that we're seeing as well. But 7, so that tells you that it's, you know, going to be, Vermont's going to be a place that people seek to live. And second homeowners, it's great for our tax base, but second homeowners typically aren't part of the community, and they don't build the richness and bring the kids into the schools. And, you know, I just think it's so important for people to live here and make it their home, because you can go to other states and you don't have these communities. We have really strong communities, and they care, you know, people care for people. You know, they can fight and we disagree, and, you know, but when the chips are down and somebody is experiencing a hardship, the community is there for them. I had 7, I hadn't read that. That's quite a statistic.
and that's, I mean, that's a force of nature. Yeah, I mean, human migration is, you see, it can't be stopped. It has to be dealt with, you know. It has to be, you know, planned for, and it's a huge impact on an area. And if we're not planning, then we just become a victim of it, and that creates all kinds of issues that we don't need.
You're right about the planning piece, and that's why with all this money, that we just have to be planning for the future. You know, when it goes away, and how we're going to continue, but planning for climate change and how we're going to reverse it. I just hope 3 of those are in the Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah, right. I was hoping that one for winter.
Yeah, we'll have to look at what.
No, they didn't list them.
Oh,
So that's a good note to maybe, and as a former events producer, I'm trying to keep us on time, and thank you so much, Kitty, for
Thank you.
making time to come down to what we call the Southeast Kingdom. So, just joke, but anyway, thank you so much, Kitty.
Thank you, Tom, and
Thank
good luck
you,
with this.
Kitty.
Good luck
For
with your
hosting
co-working
us.
space.
Yes, thank you.
It was
Thank
exciting.
you. Well, good luck to you. and I'm
Excited.
Happy to help.